Okay, it's on.
Great. Wonderful. Well, we are excited to have you join us today for Advocacy in Africa. This is a session on tools for integrating WASH and conservation in local agendas. You're going to hear case studies today from several of our colleagues. You will hear a lot about some interactive activities, and we're going to test you on those activities as well. This is a very interactive session with small groups, so we're excited to have you for the next 2.5 hours. My name is Ellen Walter. I work for IRC, and just to clarify, not International Rescue Committee, but the Dutch-based organization focused on system strengthening for water and sanitation, and we're excited to have you today. So I'm kind of your hostess for today. Feel free to enter your name and information into the chat. We are using the chat today. Evelyn, if you could go to the next slide. Oh. So you don't need to change your profile name. That was actually just for us as hosts. We did not realize that. So, but if your name is appearing in something that you'd like to change it, you can do that. If you highlight over your name, you'll see 3 dots, and you'll be able to change your name in case you would like to. We are going to be using the chat in Pathable and not in Zoom. So please, if you would like to introduce yourself, you can do that in Pathable. We ask you to let us know who you are. We're going to do a Mentimeter in just a minute to find out where you are coming from. But just to let you know that this session is being recorded, and so your participation is your agreement to be a part of that recording. And the recording will be available after the session. And we have lots of resources that you'll also find in the Pathable site. And as you know, as everything is virtual these days, considering that we are facing still a global pandemic, please be patient and kind with us, as technology can sometimes be extremely difficult. We hope that everything will run smoothly, but we will go with the flow, and we hope that you will as well. So welcome. Please, again, feel free to enter your name and anything else you'd like to know about, you would like us to know about you. So maybe your organization in the Pathable chat. Next slide, please. So just a quick overview of the session. We're going to finish up with welcome and introductions. We've got great experiences from Kenya and from South Africa on integrated advocacy and the tools associated with that. We're going to we will have a session that's focused on the differences and the similarities and how you can build between programmatic work and advocacy. And so we'll follow that with a session that's small groups around advocacy and programmatic activities and how they might be separate pathways, but you have shared goals and they can build off one another. We have a session and a presentation on messaging as an important advocacy skill. And we'll test your knowledge and have you design some messages and make a pitch within some small group sessions. And then we'll close out with applying advocacy and some tangible takeaways. Next slide, please. So if we have 2 questions that we'd like to start off with in Mentimeter. So you can go to menti.com. And also, Evita, when you share your screen, we can also add this into the chat. But the code for Mentimeter is 4462. So if you can go to Mentimeter, I know it's an added technology, but we hope you can join that. So where are you joining from? We've got a lot of folks from Washington, D.C. This is a word cloud, so the more people that enter Washington, D.C., the larger it is. We hope that there's folks joining from other places than Washington, D.C. I know there are. We've got people from South Africa, from Kenya, from the Netherlands, New York City we have, California. So we'll give it another minute for answers to come in and see Delaware, the Netherlands. We know that this session is happening late for those in Asia and in Africa and in Europe, but we're excited that you're here joining us today. So we'll give it another minute. I'm just looking, I'm looking also at the chat at the same time, so I have dual screen. So if you see me look away, it's not, okay, great. We've got Kenya. Give it another couple of seconds here. All right. Here we go, Pennsylvania. Excellent. So it's great. We've got people joining from all over the world. And we've got someone from Malawi. Excellent. All right. Evita, if you can go to the next question. So what words come to mind when you think of advocacy? And that could be anything that comes to mind. Before we provide you definitions or anything of how we interpret advocacy, we'd love to hear what you think. So enter anything in there. It's again in Mentimeter. Campaigns, change, lobbying, influencing, policy, persuasion, excellent, government, respect. There's an ask. Yes. So your request or your ask. I like change in policy. Excellent. You combine a lot of these words together, you'll see that those are all part of our definition. We'll give this another 30 seconds and then we're going to move into the next piece of our presentation. Behavior change, excellent. Influence, convincing people, a promoter. Yes, a promoter of change. I like this. These are all really great phrasing. Influencing change. I'm just putting all of those words together. Great. Well, thank you so much. The Mentimeter is going to come back, so you can leave that open if it's on your phone or on your screen. We're going to come back to that a little bit later. Evelyn, if you can bring the presentation back up, that would be great. Great. So I want to turn it over now to Kirsten Sykes, who is the Senior Biodiversity Advisor for USAID in the Bureau of Africa. So Kirsten, if you want to turn on your video so that we can see you, and over to you.
Great, thank you very much, Ellen. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, if you can speak up just a little bit.
I can do that, no problem. So on behalf of USAID, it is really my great pleasure to welcome you to this interactive session on advocacy in Africa, where we will be collectively learning from our panel of conservation and WASH professionals about their personal experiences involving health in their communities for people and nature. So our colleagues from IRC and ABCG, the African Biodiversity Collaborative Group, have assembled a range of really wonderful speakers for you today. And these speakers will share with you how they are improving water conservation and human health outcomes by reaching out to partners to cultivate alliances for change. But as we listen to these speakers, it's also really crucial to remember that advocacy is just one of many steps and approaches to improve freshwater conservation and WASH management. It's not the end result. So even after successful advocacy, much more work will remain. USAID is extremely proud to have supported this work with ABCG, the African Biodiversity Collaborative Group. ABCG is a coalition of the major US-based international conservation NGOs with field activities in Africa. ABCG creates innovative conservation solutions for fostering collaborative and adaptive learning opportunities that help practitioners improve, scale, and replicate while generating valuable user-driven knowledge that is disseminated globally. ABCG has a real culture of promoting successful biodiversity conservation with multi-sectoral approaches And today's session will really demonstrate how strong partnerships like these can advance our mutual water conservation, WASH, and health integration outcomes. We are in the final months of the current USAID supported phase of ABCG, and we're really excited to share with you our learning on critical multi-sectoral initiatives like the ones that you're going to hear about today. USAID and ABCG remain committed to local community-led development solutions underpinned by natural conservation. These tools and approaches fill a really great need in strengthening water governance and policy for protection of freshwater resources. So I wish you the best of luck, and I'm excited to join you today, and I'm going to hand it back to Ellen.
Great, thank you so much, Kirsten. Great, so before we move to the next slide, I just want to take an opportunity to ask all of the small group facilitators to just turn on their cameras for a moment. There will be 5 of us, including myself, who will be facilitating the small groups. Janet, Colleen, we have Evita and Rebecca. So you'll see their faces pop up, but you'll hear more from them when we break out into our small groups. Wonderful. All right, so Evelyn, if you can go to the next slide. So we just want to set everyone off on the same page. So there's lots of different definitions for advocacy. The one we're going to be using today includes a lot of the words that were in our word cloud, which is great. So we're defining advocacy as the practical use of knowledge for purposes of social changes directed to government, policies, laws, and procedures. We believe that advocacy is a deliberate process and should be a deliberate process. It informs and influences decision makers and seeks to make changes that are evidence-based. So that use of knowledge is extremely important and supports SDG achievements, specifically in this case, SDG 6, but also other relevant, all of the SDGs. Advocacy plays a very clear role. Next slide. So why advocacy? There's an interesting quote that says, globally, due to climate change, conflicts, inequalities, and with shrinking civic space, there's a growing interest within international development for marginalized groups to use their voice and be effective advocates. To take up advocacy, CSOs can organize, mobilize, constituencies, raise awareness, share public opinion, and engage with decision makers to influence key policies. So you're going to hear a lot about how civil society and individuals use their voice and brought about change through advocacy within their own communities and countries. So next slide. So we are going to, at the end, be talking about the advocacy strategy roadmap and a process that helps you narrow down your focus for your advocacy. Today, we're only covering 2 of the steps as part of the practical skills that we want to get across, but you'll have an opportunity to learn a lot more about them, and we'll share links to the broader process and tools that can help you get through a lot of this. Next slide. So our first presenters here, we have Thando Msomi from Conservation South Africa, and then we have 2 presenters from CESPED in Kenya, Eunice Kivivu, I'm sorry, Eunice, I think I just pronounced that incorrectly, I'm sorry, and Judith Chepkemoi. And so both of them will be presenting, and then we'll have some time for some Q&A before we move into the practical approaches. For those of you that need a live transcript or would like that, at the bottom of your screen, right where you can turn on and off your video, there's something that says live transcript CC, and you can just click on that. And you can continue to use the chat for any questions that you have. So Thando, I will turn it over to you. Next slide, Evelyn.
Thank you, Aline. Oh, sorry. If you could go back, please. The previous slide, please.
You leave it here, Evelyn. Nope, Evelyn, leave it there. Tando, yours is just a little bit slow, so you can go ahead and get started. It's the initial slide for you. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Good afternoon and good morning to all the participants all over the world. My name is Tando Msomi, Municipal Extension Coordinator. I work for Conservation South Africa, a member of the CI. I'm based in the Mzimvubu landscape in South Africa, Eastern Cape. This is it's called Mzimvubu on the basis of the fact that it's in the Mzimvubu Basin, Mzimvubu River Basin, which runs from the borders of Lesotho up in the mountains, as you can see in the background in the picture here, all the way down to the Indian Ocean. From a political perspective, we're working within the Alfenzo District Municipality, which is a municipality mandated to provide good services in terms of clean water as well as wastewater to the communities. Thank you. Next slide, please. Yes, over the years, this landscape, just to mention, it's got two sets of community infrastructure. You've got the commercial farming as well as the communal land farming. Now, these two are so different in terms of how they are being managed. Over the years, we've had problems, the area has had problems with degradation in the veld in terms of veld fires, which are not managed or so frequent. Also, in terms of the overstocking of livestock by community members who are what we call practicing subsistence farming. And we also had problems, huge problem with the alien invasive plants, which are taking too much water from the ground. And on the other hand, you also have the municipality whose mandate, like I said before, is to provide clean water to communities. And that isn't always running smooth. And you, of course, the problems that you find there, in most cases, you find that they use the system, which is basically drilling bores into the ground so that they can get water for the people in areas where you don't find, where dams or rivers are not utilized. And then in most cases, well, in some instances, you find that those bores are dry because there's not enough groundwater. And then you find that where there's no electricity, they have to use generators to pump that water to the communities. And therefore, you find that there's not diesel to supply those generators to pump water. And people end up resorting to using springs, which if those springs are not rehabilitated, you find that they tend to share them with livestock, which has a lot to do with hygiene issues. Okay, the next slide, please. So our colleagues from Washington, together with the CSA, we've come together and with the strategy, advocacy strategy, where we wanted to say, let's just try and engage the municipality and see what we can do in terms of working together and collaborate towards a nature-based solution. Now, remember, as the CSA, we've been working with communities for the past 5 years, rehabilitating springs and ensuring that people get clean water through these nature-based solutions. So we said to them, look, let's come together, let's engage the municipality and showcase what we've done over the years and see if we can get something out of it, and maybe with the aim of trying to change their policy. I'm so happy I saw some of the examples there, the influence and change. It shows that people understand merely what we've been doing over the years. We're trying to do with this advocacy strategy. So basically, it's been saying that let's use this method of using natural-based solution, which is basically rehabilitating springs, which have been there for donkey ages, people using these springs over the years. And it's an expensive and sustainable method and easy to use. Thank you. Next slide, please. So basically the goal, if I can just read in the slide here, the goal was at NDM, what NDM stands for Alfred Nzo District Municipality, the infrastructure department, and institutionalized and coordinated and integrated planning process for water resources by 2022. That was our strategy, to say that at least by 2022, the municipality would have changed their strategy and policy so that they can accommodate what CSA has been doing and which basically works. This would have worked better in terms of knowing the people that are inside the institution and working way up to the policy-making decision, so to speak, the decision makers, which is basically senior management and council. Next slide, please. So here we go. Was the goal achieved? The answer here is probably, I would say yes and no. In terms of the policy change, we are not there yet. But however, within the past year, we've realized a lot has changed within the municipal structure because they made funding available for 4 springs that we didn't do, but we only facilitated. They made funding available, they made materials, and we worked closely with the communities through their funding. And they also made personnel available for us to work together. And also the fact that steps were changed. We didn't expect them to jump to the step before the policy, they started making money. But they managed to put together their budget for the year to do this. However, we still expect to carry on working with them and try to keep on pushing to find out, to see if we can get to the step where they can put this into their policy. Because as long as it's not in their policy, it's not sustainable. We will continue having to push them instead of them putting it into their policy so that it works, even the fact that CSA is not there to tell them what to do. Next slide, please. It's still frozen on my side.
I think it's coming. I've just changed it. It's coming. Is it on now?
Yes.
Yes. So basically, what was valuable in this process? We as we're working, we realized that it is possible and it works. If you know people within the system and you've been working with the system, within the system for quite some time, it does work. You cannot just show up and all of a sudden come up with a strategy like this. You have to have your footprint in good order for quite some time, so that when you go there and speak to them, you're already talking to people who understand and know what you've done. Just to give an example, that we've been with the municipality for the past 8 years now. We've done a lot of work for them, the VA assessments, doing other policy strategies for them, and also doing campaigns and door-to-door campaigns in par with the municipality, so they understand what we do within the district.
Tando, you muted yourself by accident, so why don't you unmute yourself? And just repeat the last thing that you said.
Oh, I was saying that we've been working with them. We had an MOU, which we signed in 2013 with the municipality, to say that we're going to work together on these all other, sector departments that we work with. It also, another thing that we need to note is that you need to understand the municipal system. You need to be patient because things don't move as fast as it happens in the private sector or the NGOs. Also, the fact that the principles, advocacy principles and process can be applied in other situations. We also have other partners within the landscape who are doing the same work in the upper catchment. And they also, the more we do on the ground, the work will speak to themselves. As much as we understand that the policy is not yet there, but the work itself will speak up until someone up there understands. And also, we must also understand the fact that decision makers, your councillors and your senior managers, they have a 5-year period in the office. So which means that every 5 years, we have to repeat the situation. That's another, well, an unpalatable situation that we have to deal with, but unfortunately it has to be done. So those are the kind of things that you must take into consideration when you're coming up with the strategy. And before I close, I know Ellen now, maybe my time is up, is that I would say thank you to my colleagues in Washington and Apcg for helping us put together the strategy and together with our colleagues here in South Africa. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Tando. Again, if you have any questions or comments for Tando, please add them to the Pathable chat. We'd love to hear that. We'll have some time for a couple of questions at the end of the presentation. So thanks again, Tando. Eunice and Judith, it's over to you. If we can go to the next slide. And one more. Great, so now we'll hear from Eunice and Judith from the Center for Social Planning and Administrative Development, CESPAD. So go ahead, Eunice and Judith, over to you. You guys are muted, so if you can unmute yourselves to make sure that we can hear you.
Okay, sorry for that. Thank you very much. My name is Judith Chepkemoi. I work for Center for Social Planning and Administrative Development as the project officer. And with me is my colleague, Eunice Kivuva. She is the programs manager. CESPAD is a national NGO in Kenya. And Kenya is divided into 2 arms of government. We have the national government and the county government. With regards to the county government, CESPAD works in about 10 counties. And with regards to what we do at CESPAD is that we focus on integrated water resources management and climate change. We also focus on social accountability in water, sanitation, and hygiene. We do a lot of environmental conservation. We work with different institutions to develop their capacities like the Water Resource Users Associations. We also do qualitative and quantitative research. We also assist the county, we assist in developments of public policies, and we do lobby and advocacy. With regards to lobby and advocacy, my colleague Eunice will take us through some of our success stories with regards to our advocacies in Kenya. Welcome, Eunice.
Eunice, sorry to interrupt, just 1 second. Evelyn, can you please advance? She just talked wonderfully to this next slide. So if we can go to one more slide. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Judith. Thank you, Eileen. Not the previous slide, kindly. On the problem. Thank you. So my name is Eunice Kivuva, working for CESPAD. Judith has just introduced us and briefly given us a brief about CESPAD and our work. I will give us our advocacy experience in Kenya and with regards to the success stories that we have worked on in Kenya. So as you can see in the picture illustrated, our country, Kenya, is a water scarce country with most of the counties and regions with seasonal rivers faced with challenges on riparian land degradation. We also have human activities that really affect the catchments. In Kenya, we are also experienced with a challenge in coordination among the sector institutions, that is specifically on water resource management. So our advocacy objective has been focusing on coordination of the WASH, that is water, sanitation and hygiene, and water resource management sector institutions, the development partners, the community organized groups, and even the private sector, for us to have that collective lobby and advocacy to influence decision-making with regards to water resource management, water, hygiene, and sanitation. Next, please. So what have we done with regards to the challenges that I've just stated? Our advocacy strategy has been mobilizing the stakeholders, the development partners, the community groups, the sector institutions, the private sector, to come up together and identify the problem that is within a given subcatchment or region. And with that together, we come up with actionable solutions to address the challenges. That is through a participatory approach, through capacity building of these organized groups. If you can see in the photo picture illustrated, we have one of our community groups in one of the counties. This is in Kajiado County. The groups identifying and coming up with analyzing the problems in the subcatchment and coming up with solutions to address the issues. So with this, we also work on fact finding. We conduct research to inform our lobby and advocacy, because we understand that for us to influence decision making, we really need to present facts to the duty bearers. We really need to present facts to the development partners, for even to attract them in focusing on WRM. Next slide, please. So with regards to the advocacy success stories that we will share today, we will be focusing on 3 of the counties that we have worked on. That is one of the counties, Makueni, Narok, and Kajiado County. And even before I go to the stories, just to mention that we do not work in isolation. In our advocacy strategy, we work in collaboration with development partners. And the case studies that I am about to share, we have worked with for Narok and Makueni County. We have worked in collaboration with KEWASNET, Kenya Water, Sanitation and Civil Society Network. That's a network in Kenya, and with that we implemented a program, Water Support Governance Program, in 10 counties, and I will be sharing in 2 of the counties our experience. In Kajiado, we worked in collaboration with IRC and Wetlands International and the Watershed Program. I will also be sharing our experience and success stories with regards to our advocacy work. So just to give a brief introduction of the regions that we have worked in, that is in the regions where our case studies are based. Makueni, Kajiado, and Narok, they are all ASAL counties. And with this, they have similar challenges with regards to water resource management and service provision. There is a challenge of encroachment of the riparian land, degradation. There is a challenge of coordination. There is also a challenge of inclusion, especially for the marginalized groups. So I will start with the story in Narok County. And in Narok County, we have a story of women. And with this, the women, the name of this group, it's a Maasai Conservation Women Group. So these women were previously charcoal burners, and they were in Narok County. I've just mentioned that it's a Nassau County and a pastoral community. So with this, they were really depending on charcoal burning, cutting down trees, really degrading the environment, just for them to earn their livelihood or to get income to support themselves. And with the women in the business of charcoal burning, they were really going through had a time and challenges. An example would be them getting raped, them really getting dirty, because the business of charcoal burning is really a dirty business with a lot of cutting down trees and burning, and they were really struggling because this is an illegal business, and they could actually do the business at night because they are not. It's an illegal business. So it was really a tough moment for the women, and through our intervention, we engaged the women. We engaged the member of the county assembly in the region. We also engaged the development partners in the region. We also engaged with the county government, and with their support together, we capacity build the women. We work together on an actionable solution. And through that, they came up with a resource center. And with this resource center, they were able to learn alternative ways of income. So currently they changed their business or their focus on charcoal burning to alternative livelihood. And through this, they are also focusing on conserving the catchment. So some of the examples of the alternative livelihood that they are doing innovation through briquette to produce charcoal. That means now they are not cutting down trees. They are also doing crocheting. They are cooking to sell the products for income. And that is really helping and enhancing their livelihood. Their capacity at the moment is strong, and they are able to participate in the county decision-making processes. Number two, the story, Makueni County story. Makueni County, I've also mentioned, it's a nasal county, and most of the rivers are seasonal. And with this, there was really a challenge of lack of the policies or the laws to regulate and coordinate the natural resources, especially sand. And Makueni, the experience is that they sand is really a very important aspect with regards to the conservation of the riparian land. And before the intervention, there was uncontrolled sand harvesting. There were no policies. The community were really going through hard time because the rivers at some point could dry because the sand is harvested, there's no water stored. So at some point when during the dry season, the women have to walk for long distance for them to get water. So what we did, we also mobilized the community groups, the Water Resource Users Association in Makueni, which are referred to as the RUAS, the lowest grassroots community groups that focus on water resource management. So we mobilized them together with the development partners in the county, the state agencies, for example, Water Resource Authority and the county government. And together we were able to come up with policies. We helped the county to come up with the water policy, also sustainable sand harvesting policy. And we also strengthened the coordination platforms. And with this, at the moment, there is really a great change. And with the implementation of these policies and the coordination platforms being active, they are able to control the sand harvesting. There is also an authority that we also influenced its development. So at the moment, the county, it's really experiencing enhancement with regards to water resource management, the catchment protection, and enhanced livelihood. I will be sharing some photos in the slides that are coming. So with regards to our story—
Sorry to interrupt, you're almost out of time. So I think we want to just start to wrap up. I think you've talked quite a bit about some of the pictures that are coming on the other slides. So maybe we can advance some of the slides and see the environment that you're talking about. And then if you can slowly wrap up, or quickly, sorry, not slowly, wrap up to the next one. So
yes, thank you. So this, the previous slide. On Makueni, yes, this is some of the achievements. If you can see on the pictures, there is enhancement in riparian land. You can see in riparian, the rivers are really flowing. Next. Yes, you can see the livelihood aspect with the women involvement and improvement in the rivers. So there is irrigated agriculture. Next. Yes, this is the Maasai women group. So in the first photo, there is a advocacy tool that was handed over to the group by KWASnet and CESPAD team, just to help in capacity building for them to focus on alternative livelihood. On the other end, there is, we are showcasing some of their products at the World Environment Day. That is CESPAD team showcasing some of the women products. Next. Yes, so this speaks to the coordination platforms and our work with the IRC in Kajiado. So with this, I'll just mention that we established and strengthened coordination platforms. That is the Summit, WASH, WRM forums, right from the world to the summit. And the main objective was to have that collective lobby and advocacy. We also came up with the budget champions. They are currently active, focusing on budget advocacy, influencing decision-making in the county. We also have the RUA Council, the Water Resource User Association, a platform of the RUAs in Kajiado County, also focusing on water resource management and a watershed program. Next. So with the challenges and mitigation strategies, we experience the challenge of political goodwill, culture and socioeconomic challenges, literacy levels, of course, the pandemic. And with this, what we've done, we worked on a continuous dialogue engagement with the duty bearers just to get the buy-in and good political goodwill. Civic education and participatory approach has really helped us in reaching out to the marginalized and the low literacy community groups. Online sessions, riding on technology and limited physical meetings and limited participants in the physical meetings has really supported our advocacy work. One of the key lessons that we learned is that advocacy really takes time for you to experience change. And with this, it is very important to be patient, to persist and continuously engage with the duty bearers, work in a collaborative approach, but of course, very important to note when is the important time for you to descend. And for more with regards to our advocacy work, we have come up with documentaries. As I wind up, Eileen, next.
Thank you. Great.
Thank you. So we have a documentary on saving the last drop, IWRM in Kenya. We also have regulating sand harvesting in Makueni County and inclusion of the marginalized groups in IWRM Narok County. You can check that on YouTube. We did this in collaboration with KWASnet. Thank you so much, Eileen and the IRC team for giving us this opportunity, and the whole World Water Week coordination team. We really appreciate.
Great. Thank you so much, Eunice and Judith. It's great to hear from you and from Tando about these great, this kind of implementation of and the tools that you use to get there. We will be posting resources and other information in addition to what we've already posted on Pathable, so you'll be able to access everything that has been shared. At this point, if you can please type any questions that you have to Eunice, Judith, or Tando in the chat, and I'll ask them to take a look at the chat and answer you directly. At this point, I want to turn it over to Evita Rosenberg from IRC, my colleague, who's going to talk to us about advocacy and programmatic activities and how they can work together. So Evita, over to you. And I believe we want to start with the Mentimeter. So Evelyn, if you want to stop sharing your screen, Evita can pick it up.
Excellent. Thanks, Ellen. And it's really great to be here. And I want to thank Eunice, Judith, and Tando as well for their excellent presentations and case studies from South Africa and Kenya. And I'm Evita Rosenberg, work for IRC as NSZ Chief Director's Office, and together with my colleague leading on the influencing advocacy portfolio at IRC in the Netherlands. So some of my case studies are particularly at the level in the Netherlands. But before diving into the session that I will host in the coming 30 minutes, I would like to get to know you a bit better as well. We kicked off with a Mentimeter, and I'll share it now, in which we asked where you're from. And now the next question, which I'll share now, is if you have any experience with advocacy in your work. And you can access the Menti by going to www.menti.com, and you can enter the code 30134462. And I see we have a lot of experienced people in the room. I'm happy to see that. And I hope you can still learn something throughout from all the different case studies and from your co-workers. And I'm always very interested when someone says maybe, because often when we dive into the definition of advocacy, we actually notice that people realize that they've done advocacy pretty much from the point you're able to walk around on Earth. All right, so most people are experienced. And here is one person that says, no, I don't have any experience in my work. So let's see after the session if this person is still convinced that he or she did not do anything advocacy work so far or activities. Excellent, and feel free to still answer the Menti even until I stop sharing the screen, which I will do now, and then Evelyn can take over. And you can go to slide 29, Evelyn, where I will speak to the advocacy strategy as Ellen already presented very briefly. Next, yes, thank you. And as Ellen also mentioned, it is, and Thando as well, it's incredibly useful to use an advocacy strategy to identify your goals and also go through all different steps. In this particular methodology, we use the 8 steps approach, where on the one hand, you will identify your issue, and the other hand, the goals and objectives. And for this particular item, I am speaking to the advocacy approaches and activities. And later in the session, we will talk about crafting advocacy messages. So this part of the session is going to be a bit more interactive. But first, I want to tell you a few stories as an example. Next slide, please. And Ellen already referred to the various definitions that there are of advocacy, but the one that I very much like to use is that advocacy activities come down to a wide range of activities that are conducted to influence decision makers at different levels with the overall claim of combating the structural causes of poverty and injustice. And on the, because I also worked in the watershed program that Eunice just spoke to with CESPAD. And on the left-hand side, there's an incredible woman from Bangladesh. Her name is Kohinoor. And through advocacy and raising the concerns of her community, she, after a year, received a tube well. And on the right-hand side, I want to introduce you to Valentine of Kenya. And in 2018, after again raising her voice for the need for better access to toilets for marginalized people and people with disabilities, she was appointed to the Laikipia East Budget Committee. So those are 2 beautiful stories that we've seen in the program that I worked on, the advocacy program. Next slide, please. But there are, and these were some very short examples, and now during the 2 other presentations, you've heard different approaches and activities that are there, but there are many, and the sky is the limit. You can be incredibly creative to that extent. And also, as was mentioned, I believe by Judith or Eunice, that you also need to be perseverant and adapt your activities. I always use this continuum to explain the different sort of activities that are there. Some are on the left-hand side more geared towards dissent, activism, campaigns, for example, the Voices for Water campaign that you see on the right-hand side of the screen. And other activities and approaches are more geared towards dialogue, petitions or inclusive consultations or sit-downs with decision makers. But most importantly, within my introduction, I would like to emphasize that you will achieve most when programmatic activities and advocacy activities go hand in hand. So basically, when advocacy activities complement programmatic activities. So when talking about programmatic activities, I'm specifically referring to infrastructure behavior change, and advocacy activities refer to changing policies, influencing decision makers, increasing budget allocations, because advocacy and influencing are ways to increase the impact of your programmatic work. So to simplify it is, on the one hand, programmatic, building a toilet, and on the other hand, advocacy is influencing policies and legislation around sanitation or access to sanitation. This perhaps sounds easier than it is, and therefore we're going to have a little exercise in the coming 15 minutes. And let's go to the next slide, Evelyn. Thank you. So what we'll do, we'll divide the group of now 30 plus people into 4 or 5, I believe, and each group will have a facilitator. In the group, the facilitator will share her screen, and I pre-identified 4 programmatic activities, as you can see here on the screen. 2 of them are more WASH related, 2 of them are more conservation related. And we are asking you to brainstorm within your group on what advocacy activities or approaches can you think of related to the 4 pre-identified programmatic activities. For examples are specific campaigns or petitions or meetings with policymakers. And then after 15 minutes, we'll get back in plenary, and I'll ask some of the groups to report back and share some of their reflections on how it went. So Janet, if we could go into the little breakout groups, and then we'll see each other in 15. Good luck.
I think everyone is assigned. So if you're not, you'll end up in the main room with me. So, and then I'll assign you. Okay. So I hope you guys all have very great, stimulating conversations, and here you go.
Vita, I think everyone is back, so you can.
Yeah. All right. Excellent. So welcome back, everyone. For the next couple, 5 to 10 minutes, I want to hear back from all of you how you found the session, if you learned anything new, or whether you found it difficult to come up with advocacy approaches and link to programmatic activities. And let me first pull up the screen. There you go. And I'm really happy to see that the document has been quite well populated with different examples. So I'm just going to go, because we have a little bit of time to reflect back, I am going over each programmatic activity real quick, and I might ask 1 or 2 people of each group just to say a few words on the example that's there. So with this programmatic activity around providing wash facilities or toilets in schools, I see that there are a couple of really interesting examples of advocacy approaches and activities. There are many more, of course. First here, I see one around budget allocations for washing schools from country government, potentially other partners. And I just want to ask if there's anyone that wants to speak to this particular advocacy activity, or one of the facilitators.
Which one?
The budget allocations. This one.
Lucy, please go ahead.
Which one?
Lucy, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm asking.
Lucy.
Okay, I'm asking which one am I talking about?
Sorry, Lucy, I didn't see you yet. No, you can go ahead with I was talking about the budget allocations, but Lucy was in my group, and you spoke also to the power of sorry, that was your colleague about the power of numbers, but go ahead about the marginalized people.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to input that as organizations, we should be able to engage maybe not the duty bearers, but those people who are the rights holders. The name was slipping away. So the rights holders, so that even as they engage their government or the duty bearers, they are aware of their rights, so they are able to articulate their rights and fight for them, be it through influencing policies, or even engaging them, even at the very, very community level. Like, for example, the people who build the toilets, as I was saying, such people should be engaged, because sometimes they know they are supposed to have like accessible toilets, but they just, they just ignore and continue building toilets that are not accessible, especially in schools. And this makes achievement of Article 19 of the CRPD very, very hard to achieve, of persons with disabilities living independently in their communities. And for me, I believe it starts with the school, the primary school that I go, the health center that I attend, any other community facility. Yeah, thank you.
Excellent, thank you, Lucy. And also within another programmatic activity, which is specifically our restoration of forest and riparian areas, we briefly spoke about the importance of communication between communities and decision makers to know what is actually needed locally. Going back to this programmatic activities, anyone who would like to speak to toilets in schools? And otherwise, I'll go to the next one.
Hi, Evita.
Hi, Eunice or Judith.
Yes, I could just briefly speak to the point with regards to budget allocation. This was linked to budget advocacy to influence the duty bearers. For example, in Kenya, we could speak to the default system, the county government, to allocate budgets, even as they work on their budgets, to allocate budgets for WASH in schools. And this would support the WASH projects, for example, the facilities in schools. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you so much. Then another interesting example of advocacy activity was referred to by Lillian on the protection of natural springs. She spoke about use of campaigns. Lillian, could I call on you to say a few words?
Yes, thank you, Evita. I mentioned a practical example where I was involved in, where we used flagship species such as birds to bring attention to the issues of spring degradation. And with that, then people started to take notice. There was people coming in, voices from the global level to the local level, just from this single campaign. And with that, the government started protecting the springs based off on the messages that came out of this campaign. Thank you.
Thank you, Lillian. I would like to wrap up this particular session, but over to you, Ellen. You want to say something?
Just very quickly, we had someone who had raised their hand before. So Ayatollah wanted to talk briefly about the budget advocacy. So that could maybe be the last comment, and then you can wrap up and we'll move to the next session.
Excellent, go ahead.
Thank you. I think it had been touched on, but I just wanted to share something that we have done. So we've either leveraged on existing material, or we have actually commissioned, fresh research to be done, and then use that as an advocacy tool with governments for budget allocation. So, for instance, I had mentioned, that I work in the area of the NTDs, and that has an impact on children not being in school, having, school absenteeism, and so, we were able to have studies done that indicated the negative impact on children, when they have NTDs, and then the report from that was then presented, was leveraged in the media, was presented to government, and then, you know, that was used as a tool, you know, to get them to commit political will to that by budget allocation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ayatollah. And also, especially because it's the first time so far I've heard the word media, but the media can be incredibly useful to ensure public engagement with your point and to get more political attention. I see Nicholas also raised his hand. That's what you're saying, Ellen. Yeah. Nicholas, over to you.
Yes, hi everybody. I'm so sorry that I had to join this session late. It stood out as a real highlight for me of the week. So I hope it was as good as it sounded. I'm keen to bring your participants' attention to the Accountability for Water program, which many of you may be aware of. With funding from the Hewlett Foundation, Water Witness is working with WaterAid, with IRC, with Oxfam, with several southern partners to really dive into the knowledge that is available to support advocacy on water. And last year we published a global evidence review of the knowledge which is available to help design and delivery of advocacy in the water sector. So I put the link in the chat on the CWE page. There's some incredible resources there. For example, we find from the 1,000 bits of research that have been done on this that some key factors emerge which influence how effective advocacy is. And they can help us all design better initiatives, whether it's on sanitation or protection of spring headwaters. So please do use that resource. It's designed for people like you to draw from, and do sign up to the Accountability for Water webpage, which again is a link provided, where you can register and become a regular receiver of updates, and even benefit from a research program which can fund research on this topic across Africa. So sorry to load you up with lots of information there, but there are resources and many people out there working to equip the likes of the people on this call with the knowledge needed to be as effective as possible.
Thank you, Nicholas, for sharing that knowledge, and also thanking everyone for your active engagement and participation in the breakout sessions. I'm really happy with all the stories I've heard so far. So my closing remarks with that, I'm handing over to Anne for the next session is, I've said it before, but programmatic activities and advocacy should go hand in hand and reinforce each other. There are many advocacy approaches and activities, as you've seen. You could even make use of the media. Literally, the sky is the limit. For that, you need to be creative and patient, because, as mentioned, change doesn't happen overnight. It often takes even 5 years to get a policy change. That's my timer. And it's okay to step back and try something else every now and then with different partners, approach your decision makers. So with those final remarks, I'm handing back over to Ellen. Thank you all.
Great. Thank you so much, Evita. Evelyn, if you can please share the presentation again. That would be great. And at this point, we are moving on to the subject of messaging, which is very exciting. So messaging is an extremely important advocacy skill. And so I'm going to turn over to Tando and Colleen to take over from here. So over to you.
Thanks, Ellen. Good job, everybody. Way to hang in there and stick past the interactive portion. You are getting more out of this CWE session than the others who are dropping off when it's time to get active. So keep that energy, keep that enthusiasm, because now we're going to shift and look at messaging. And like the example that Nicholas shared with us, whether it's a very powerful piece of information or a really powerful, impactful programmatic approach, you know, what do you do with it where? So my name is Colleen Sorto. I work at Conservation International, and I have the great pleasure of working with my colleague Tando Msomi from CSA on their project. So I wanted to invite Tando back with me so that we can maybe ask some more questions about messaging and how it played a role in his story. So Tando, are you there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay,
It's dark
so
outside.
I would like you to please tell me about one of the key messages that you used in the example you shared, and specifically kind of who was the key audience or the target of the messaging that you shared.
The key audience basically was, I would say, colleagues from within the municipality whom we've been working together over some time. We started engaging them in the strategy so that, because we know that at the end, it has to go through a lot of stages towards getting council resolution or getting recognized up in the council and senior management level. Now, it's always important, like we had to sit down and meet these colleagues in the lower level, I would say junior managers within the municipality that we've been working together and say, look, we've got the strategy, we've been trained and we've been come together with CSA and colleagues from Washington. And we would like now to take this further than just us working together and to go up into the senior level management. How do we do it? And they, well, she or, yeah, let me just put it a day because it was more than one, took us through the stages of how you do this. Like for instance, it starts from meeting her and explaining to her what exactly it is. And from there, it goes to the senior manager whom she reports to. And we had a meeting with the individual. And then from there, we were informed as to what next. And then it goes as far as going to providing this presentation, which we did just before the COVID-19 lockdown, where we're presenting to the standing committee. And those are the stages that we would not have known if we didn't know this person, or if we haven't worked or didn't know this person beforehand. So that's the message. It's basically making your footprint known upfront. It must be good. So that, because you don't know when you're going to meet these people some other time. I mean, we've been in our friend zone now for 8 years and working together. All there was is our name has been good to them. So we didn't have to say much about trying to convince them to look into this because they knew what we were doing on the ground, and our work speaks for themselves, for itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Tando. You've actually answered many questions that I have that we're going to dive into here, because it sounds like in your example, messaging is more than just kind of that top big banner message of like, work with us and here's our example, but that you had to think about who are the managers? How do I get to this community? How do I get to this committee? You know, how do I then connect this to ending in a council resolution? So I'd like to ask you to stay close by as we look a little bit closer, because I want to draw links back to your presentation and back to this example. So Evelyn, if we can go on to the next slide, I'd like us to continue and then say, okay, well, a big part of this then is, so, oh, sorry, just a reminder where we are on the roadmap. We've already gone through this process of figuring out exactly what we want, who we need to talk to, these obstacles. We figured out what's our advocacy, what's our approach, and then we're really fine tuning into like, what's the message we need to send and who we're sending it to. So that first piece, like Tando talked about, and Evelyn, we can go to the next slide, is making sure that your message is compelling and making sure that when you get that moment, you never know where you're going to meet them, as you said, Tando, that your message is brief, it's focused, it's solution oriented. So you're not just telling the counselor about the problems that are there, but that what you have to offer and bring to them. It's targeting the key interests of the decision maker, and that it uses non-technical language, and that it's very clear. It's optimistic and hopeful. A good advocacy message also has a clear request. You're not just telling me about your work, but you're telling me about your work because why? And it responds to the present moment. And we'll talk more about that as we go on. Evelyn, next slide. So when you're putting together that bigger picture, and Tando, I think you can even acknowledge, we went through this together. We had to think about, what was the advocacy message? And so these 4 things, so read them over carefully because I'm about to post them into the Pathable chat and you're going to get a chance to craft your own advocacy message. We're going to look at, when you make that message, you want to be really clear, what's the issue? What's this problem? Why should the decision maker care about this issue? That same piece of don't just tell them what's wrong, but tie it into finding that solution. What is that solution? And how is this going to impact the problem? And then specifically, what do you want your decision maker to do following your interaction? And I think what's important about the example that Tando shared is sometimes it's not as linear as here is my solution, you make the policy and everything changes. But that you're going to need to look for targets along the way, that advancing from, an initial contact, a set of managers to certain committees is part of the advocacy journey. So next slide. We also want to think about who our messengers are. Tando is fantastic, and there might be times he's exactly the guy you need. Like you said, you had 8 years of experience. Those relationships really opened doors and perhaps had your audience willing and able and ready to listen to you. But for an advocacy effort, you might need diverse messengers. You might need people from all ranges of seniority. Maybe it is the president of an association that voice is going to resonate the most, or maybe it's a women's group, or school children asking for something that might be effective. Your messengers need to be able to be effective public speakers. So if they're shy and not going to take the moment, perhaps you want to consider a different messenger to work with you. And they should also support your advocacy goal. You have to make sure that everyone's on board and you see that shared target. Next slide. The next thing we want to talk about is pitching. And what do you do with your message? So you have this message, you've thought through these 4 elements, but like Tando talked about, there's going to be moments in which you're going to get to deliver that message. And the first thing is you want to think about revising your content. Is it appropriate for the moment at hand? There might be times when you meet the key decision maker that you need to target, and you find him or her at the grocery store with their trolley. That might be the right moment, or it might be a moment just to drop in a nice to see you, and I'm going to be coming to visit you next week in the office. You want to think about that context. Are you in a good place for this conversation to happen? That same person with their trolley in the grocery store may or may not be receptive to you. If you have that moment and it is the right opportunity, that you figured out exactly how much you want to say, you want to focus on the ask. You want to be really clear after this interaction, what do you want that person to do? Are they going to go and recommend that you are invited to a council meeting and added to the agenda? Do you want them to set up a meeting for you one-on-one so that you can share, great report that demonstrates exactly what you're talking about? And the other thing is when you're pitching, you want to make sure you read your subject. Does he or she seem receptive to what I have to say? Or are they really just hoping I'll stop talking so they can move to the queue and buy their groceries? All of these things are happening underneath and within your head as you're delivering. So with that, I'm going to give us all a chance to sort of practice this. In just a minute, Janet's going to break us down into small groups. And we're going to take about 30 to 35 minutes, facilitators. And the first thing that you're going to do is practice developing an advocacy message. Think about an example or make one up if you don't have one on the tip of your tongue, in which you can develop a message for advocacy. And I'm going to put these 4 points within the Pathable chat so that you can go back and reference, but you want to make sure you keep these things in mind. And then after you all get a chance to think on your own and to sketch out your message, your facilitator is going to ask some of you to share. And we'll offer each other some feedback and thinking, is it clear? Am I hearing what you're asking for? Am I seeing the solution to the problem? Then we're going to practice pitching. And your facilitators all have instructions on how exactly to get our volunteers to practice pitching. So you'll identify together where's that conversation that you want to have, and we're going to kind of role play and have some fun. With that, I think we're ready to break into breakout groups. And facilitators, if you need anything, I will try to be watching the chat, and I'm posting those 4 questions in the Pathable chat.
I'm not going to take over. I'll just turn it right back to you for any closing remarks you want to make on this session when everybody's back.
Okay, we got pulled without notice, and I thought we had till 1:10. So while everyone's coming back, I just want to pick up on a theme that our room was talking about, which is what happens when you don't have a receptive and kind person you're pitching to, or what happens when you do have that person, but then they don't take action. And just to pick up on that thread, and if you go and reference the advocacy methodology that we're referencing today, you'll see that's a time to revisit your strategy and take it down to that step below. Tando had mentioned using your allies to bring the message back, to repeat it, or it's identifying where do I need a champion. We had an example where we were meeting with a district representative in Tanzania, and they basically are like, women in water, no problem there. Maybe it's an education campaign. Maybe it's a campaign about this issue so that it starts to gurgle up from the grassroots. That's when you get a hard no, that's a great indication that it's time to revise your strategy, that maybe the entry point that you saw either isn't there or it's changed. I would love to go through and share and hear about what happened in other rooms, because I'm sure it was as lively as and exciting as ours, but I don't think we have the time. And instead, what I'd like to do maybe is, Evelyn, if you can put the presentation back up, we're going to touch a little bit about like, what do you do with some of these skills now that we've started sharpening them together, as well as some places you can find these materials that we're referencing. We want to leave you feeling both empowered with about what you can do and where you can look for resources. So Ellen, I think who's up first? You or me?
So I come up just with the next thing to go to the Mentimeter, which we can do. And you can also type in the chat. But we just want to know, how will you apply what you have learned today around messaging, around incorporating more advocacy into the work that you're doing, how to link conservation and freshwater conservation with wash work through an advocacy lens. So if you want, Evita, if you want to share your screen, and Evelyn can stop sharing for just a moment, and then we'll do this quickly and come back then to Colleen to give us some final words and some next steps before we close. We've got still about 20 minutes, so we're still relatively on time. No one wants to apply what they've learned. Gosh.
We need to give people a minute to think and type and log in. So this is where that filling of funds. And we could also talk a little bit about the ABCG website and resources while people are filling in and come back to this.
Well, what I was thinking, we've got some things coming in. Also, I just wanted to commend Lucy was brave enough to do pitching in our group, and she actually did an excellent job. I came back to her as the mayor and said, our policy is great. I don't understand what the problem is. And she came back with and said it wasn't inclusive enough, and did a really good, had a nice, quick conversation. So I think, yeah, just congratulations to her. So we've got, some people talking about talking with the colleagues and their boss about what to do and how to incorporate advocacy. Pitching, lots of people are interested in pitching and trying to figure out how they can apply pitching in their work. Don't drown in details. Excellent. Yeah, sometimes the shorter the message, the better, as long as you have the ask or what it is that you want to know in that. That's great. You'll use the case studies or at least reference those. That's great. I like that when you have a colleague on, it's really great. So I like that Fabrizio is going to use it, some of the skills that he learned when drafting his West Africa regional advocacy strategy. Influencing change on wash and water resources management interventions. Excellent, that's great. Scope for champions, good. We'll give it another kind of 30 seconds here, and then Colleen will go back to the presentation and to you for where we can find tools and use tools and what we can do next. A skills transfer to beneficiaries, that's great. So encouraging maybe partners and the population that you work with to use their voice. I think that's a great way and transfer some of the skills, particularly around messaging and pitching, and how can they use their voice more effectively. I think that's great. All right. So you can continue to add things in Mentimeter if you'd like. Oh, we've got two that just came in. So mainstreaming the learning with the organizational programs, that's great. You're using that evidence and information. I think that's also great. And trying to make change. Excellent. Evita, if you want to stop sharing your screen, and Evelyn, if we'll come back to you, if you can share the last couple of slides that we have, that would be great. And Colleen, I'm going to turn directly over to you to talk about the ABCG website and resources, and then we'll wrap up.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody. I'm going to switch from my CI hat to my ABCG task lead. So I've been working with professionals across sub-Saharan Africa, specifically with those in South Africa and Uganda, on looking at this intersection. And we just want to offer some resources and information that we've done. So if you go to abcg.org and hover under the Issues tab, you'll find that freshwater conservation and WASH, which is kind of the entry point to find some of this work that we've done. And so on the next slide, the first two resources are things that have happened because of our partnership with IRC, and this really underlining the importance of advocacy in working in an integrated manner. So the first piece is the Freshwater WASH Advocacy Strategy Workshop Facilitator's Guide and its appendices. And those live within that URL on the IRC website. It tells you how to work through a 4-day workshop and go through that 8-step process that Ellen, Evita, and I each showed, so that you can work through all of those elements. We had lots of complex thinkers in our groups who didn't just go for the message, but here is the bigger piece and all of the other pieces underneath. And this methodology helps you step through. Someone referenced case studies in there, what I learned and what I'm going to use. And ABCG also produced a report that looked at the experiences that Tando and his team in South Africa had, and the Jane Goodall Institute in Uganda had, while applying their advocacy strategy. I also just wanted to take the chance to plug 3 additional resources that we have that help you with this, whether you're approaching it as I'm a pure advocate and advocacy is my methodology, but if you're someone who actually sits more in the programmatic space, and it's that proof of concept adoption into policy practice funding change. We also have resources for those who are looking to really put this type of integrated work together. So there's guidelines that are intended for implementers, a monitoring and evaluation framework and indicators, which can really help you build that body of evidence to say, here's the benefit, and take that up to that advocacy level, as well as a lessons learned report from our projects in South Africa and Uganda and what they learned while testing these projects. One of our big lessons was advocacy is important. So on the next slide, I'm going to pass it on to Ellen, who's going to talk a little bit about some resources that IRC has and end with how we're continuing this collaboration because we see these pieces connected. So over to you, Ellen.
Great, thanks, Colleen, and thanks for a really great session on messaging and pitching, both really important aspects to advocacy. So thank you for that, and thanks everyone for their participation. So I just want to highlight a couple of additional resources. IRC hosts a platform called the WASH Systems Academy, and there is a specialist course around advocacy, so advocating for universal WASH services. And a lot of the examples that are mentioned there come from the Watershed program, as well as some of the collaborative work that we've done with ABCG. So the link is already in Pathable, but it's a free course. It's self-guided that you can take at any point in time. So that's available. There are also additional case studies from around the world in Africa and Asia and regionally, globally, examples of advocacy and action. So from the Watershed Empowering Citizens program that was funded by the Dutch government. But there's a lot of really great case studies and tools that are available also on that website. And as Colleen said, we're moving into a new and interesting adventure. We are taking a combination of the tools that Colleen mentioned and the WASH Systems Academy and creating a blended learning course. And so currently that we are piloting that blended learning course in September. And we're hoping after that we will get out a lot of the tweaks and we'll be offering this on a more regular basis. But it's a course that's taking place. It's called Advocating for Ecosystems in WASH, and it's taking place over about a 3-week time frame with a couple of hours a day, with a combination of self-guided, facilitated, and then workshops similar actually to what we did with the advocacy exercise that we're calling labs. So there will be an opportunity to continue to learn more, and we're really excited to see how this plays out. Unfortunately, at the moment, we are significantly over the interest for our that course, but there is a wait list. And so as we said, we're hoping to offer that more times throughout the year after we do our pilot in September. So on that note, you can go to the final slide. And we just wanted to say thank you. We are very excited. We're 10 minutes early, which I know never happens in a session. So I'm going to turn back to Colleen for a second. Go ahead.
I just wanted to mention, so those of you who said, oh, this blended learning sounds amazing, but what, you're full? ABCG has a freshwater WASH community of practice, which we're hoping to keep active past this term. And so I just posted the LinkedIn group on the Pathable chat. So if you're interested, please stay tuned there. I'm sure Ellen and I will find other ways of reaching out to those who are interested, but all is not gone here.
Great, thanks, Colleen. So we hope that you enjoyed the session today. We really appreciate your active participation and sticking through to the end. And I just want to take the opportunity to thank all of our presenters, our small group facilitators, and everyone who was a part of planning and executing this, particularly all of the work behind the scenes that went into making sure this was a smooth process. So Janet, thank you for kicking us into groups and making sure that everything's running smoothly, and to Evelyn for all of her work on this. So thank you again to to everyone for your participation, and look forward to collaborating on advocacy and all of this work going forward. So please visit all of the tools, come back to Pathable. Our page has all of these resources, and we'll include additional ones that were mentioned in the presentation. But we're excited to continue on this journey with you. So thank you so much. And we're going to give you back, which has never happened in a session before, 10 minutes of your day. So thank you. Feel free to continue the conversation in the chat. And otherwise, you can stop recording and we are good to go. Thanks, everyone. Take care and have a great rest of your day, evening, night, wherever you are in the world.
And the recording will be on the CWE platform, right? After.
Yes, the recording will be on the CWE platform.
Yeah, so keep the chat going on Pathable, definitely.
Yes.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you. Good.